We're tight on budget nitrogen monoxide bonuses this year. HR announced after I brought in 6 new contracts. For 8 months I smiled and worked harder. Then September came, and I made sure they'd remember September forever. Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tales, where loyalty dies, lies bleed out, and the truth hits like a slap to the face. These aren't just stories, they're confessions soaked in betrayal and regret. Ever spotted a red flag when it was already too late? Say it in the comments. Let's tear into today's tale. My name is Sienna Valdezon. I want you to picture this. Sitting in the conference room at 9:30 in the morning, our HR director Myra just finished telling everyone that the bonuses are canceled this year because we're tight on budget. And looking around at my coworkers' face, and I can see the disappointment. Here's the thing, he had just brought in 6 major contracts and my first year 6 contracts worth over $2 million in revenue, and they're telling me there's no money for a bonus, but that's not even the part that made me want to burn everything down 3 days. Terry walked past the executive conference room and saw catering being set up for their quarterly retreat planning meetings, and fancy desserts, the whole thing. Then I noticed the architectural plans spread across the table they were renovating. The executive floor, new furniture, marble countertops, some kind of meditation room. That's when I realized that he weren't broke. They just didn't think I deserved anything. Before I go deeper into what happened, could you please take a few seconds to tell me in the comments where you're listening from? Because I want to know where my story reaches, and also subscribe and click the bell icon, because what I'm about to tell you is going to show you exactly how I made them pay for every single month they made me wait. So here I am, 26 years old, working for this massive consulting firm that basically runs half the corporate training programs in the country. My job was bringing in new clients, and I was ridiculously good at it, like scary goody. Could read people in meetings, figure out exactly what they needed to hear, and close deals that other people spent months trying to land. But the executives? They treated me like I was lucky to be there. CEO was this guy named Thornton Webwo. Had this way of looking right through you when you talk like you weren't important enough to register in his brain. CFO Celeste Parks was even worse, had asked me to repeat myself constant, like she couldn't be bothered to listen the first time. And the VP of sales, this woman named Fallon Nash, would actually interrupt me mid-sentence to ask if I'd considered more traditional Apro orchestration approach. I was outselling everyone else by 30%, so when they canceled bonus, he didn't. Our guy didn't complain, he just smiled and said, I understood these were challenging times, and Thini went home and started planning. Most people would have looked for another job, maybe filed a complaint, but I realized something during those first few weeks after the bonus announcement. These people had made a huge mistake. They'd shown me exactly who they were in. They had no idea who I was. He started paying attention, real attention, not just to the work, but to them, how they moved through the office, what made them nervous. They talked tohat, they were afraid of. Damon Webb, our CEO, had this habit of clearing his throat before he lead, and he lied constantly about knowing details he didn't know, about being involved in decisions he never heard off, about understanding technical aspects of our programs that he couldn't explain if his life depended on. I was terrified someone would figure out was basically just a good-looking guy within Bahoed, never actually done the workless Parks. The CFO was obsessed with being right about financial projections, spend hours crafting these conservative estimates, and then when anyone suggested different number, she'd get this look on her face like they'd personally attacked her. She couldn't handle being wrong about money, especially not in front of other people. In Fallon Nash, she was desperate to prove she was irreplaceable. She'd take credit for other people's ideas, volunteer for projects she couldn't handle, constantly name drop about her relationships with important clients. But here's what I noticed, that those client relationships were mostly her calling them once every few months to check in. She wasn't actually bringing in business anymore. For 8 months I watched them. He learned their schedule as their insecurity. I share weak spots. He started noticing things like how Damon would panacea board members asked technical questions during presentations. Celeste would second-guess herself if anyone challenged her projections with industry data, how Fallon would get defensive if anyone implied her role might not be essential. And while I was learning all of this, he kept doing my job, bringing in clients, succeeding targets, buying the perfect employee. Never complained about anything, but I was also doing something else. I was positioning myself. Our company had this annual board presentation every September. It was the biggest deal of the year. Board would fly in from all over the country, and the executives would present the yearly performance future projection strategic initiatives. All of it was basically their chanchetto proved they deserve their jobs for another year, and I realized that was my opportunity. Started reaching out to board members months in advance in it directly. Obviously, but I'd make sure to be involved in client meetings when board members were visiting. I'd send detailed reports that would occasionally get forwarded up to them. I'd volunteer to help with research for presentations. Meant I got to see exactly what information executives were planning to present. More importantly, I got to see what information they weren't planning to present. Julie had a clear picture of what was going to happen in September. Curious about the technical methodology behind our highest performing client programs. Can you walk us through the specific frameworks that generated these results? I watched Damon's face, and there it was, the throat clearing. He had no idea what frameworks we actually used because he'd never bothered to learn them. He started talking about innovative approaches and synergistic solutions, which meant absolutely nothing. Eliza looked confused. I'm sorry. Could you be more specific? Which particular assessment tools are we implementing, and how do they compare to industry standards? This was beautiful. See, Eliza had asked me about this exact topic 2 weeks earlier. I'd given her a detailed breakdown of our actual methodologies, showed her comparative data with our competitors, explained why our approach was working. She knew I understood this stuff inside and out. But Damon, he was drowning. Double quotes. Well, Eliza, that's really more of an operational detail that my team handles. The important thing is the results we're seeing. Actually, interrupted board member Marcus Chen. I'd like to understand those operational details. They seem crucial to evaluating whether our success is sustainable. Another question I prepared Marcus for, without him realizing it. During his last visit, I'd casually mentioned some research I'd done about long-term sustainability in corporate training programs. I'd planted the seed that this was something worth asking about. Damon looked like he wanted to disappear. He started stammering about bringing in subject matter experts to answer technical questions, which made him look completely incompetent in front of people who needed to believe he was running the company. That's when Celeste jumped in to save him. Big mistake. Perhaps we should move to the financial projections, where I can provide the detailed analysis you're looking for. Gwendolyn Celeste opened her presentation, and I could see she was nervous but trying to project confidence. She launched into her conservative projections for next year, talking about maintaining steady growth and avoiding unnecessary risks. Board member Julian Torres raised his hand. Gwendolyn, these projections seem quite conservative compared to industry benchmarks. Are we potentially leaving money on the table? Perfect. Julian had asked me about industry benchmarks just last month. I'd sent him comprehensive data showing that companies like ours are typically growing much faster than Celeste projections suggested. Not because I was trying to undermine her, but because he'd asked and I'd given him accurate information. While Julian, I believe in prudent financial planning. It's better to exceed conservative expectations than to fall short of aggressive ones. But, said Eliza, if our competitors are achieving 15 to 20% growth and we're projecting 8%, aren't we basically planning to fall behind? I had given Eliza those exact competitor numbers 3 weeks ago when she'd asked about market trends. Celeste's face went white because she knew Eliza was right, but admitting it would mean admitting her projections were inadequate. Well, those numbers can be misleading depending on how you calculate. Actually, Marcus jumped in. I have data here showing that most firms in our sector are projecting double-digit growth. Are we missing opportunities our competitors are seeing? Gwendolyn started backtracking, trying to explain why her numbers were more realistic, but she sounded defensive and unprepared. You could see the board members exchanging glances, wondering why their CFO didn't seem to understand basic industry trends. Then Fallon made her fatal mistake. She tried to rescue the situation by taking over. If I may, I think what we're missing here is the strength of our client relationships. My team has maintained exceptional retention rates, and I've personally managed relationships with our top-tier clients for years. Board member Veronica Walsh looked interested. That's great to hear. Fallon, can you tell us about your recent interactions with those top-tier clients? What feedback are they giving you about future needs? This was the moment I'd been waiting for. Veronica had asked me this exact question 2 months ago, and I'd given her detailed insights about what our major clients were actually saying about their future training needs. Information I've gathered by actually talking to them regularly, not just calling to check in once a quarter. Fallon started talking about general satisfaction and positive relationships, but she couldn't provide specifics because she didn't have regular, substantive contact with these clients anymore. I'm sorry, said Julian, but when you say you've managed these relationships, how often are you actually speaking with decision makers at these companies? Fallon's voice got tighter. Well, I maintain regular contact through various channels. Because, Veronica continued, I was under the impression that most of our day-to-day client interaction is handled by our account management team. Are you saying you're personally involved in their ongoing needs assessment? I watched. Fallon realized she'd walked into a trap. She couldn't claim to be managing relationships she wasn't actually managing, but admitting the truth would make her look irrelevant. I oversee the strategic aspects of those relationships, but not the operational aspects. Eliza asked, so when clients have specific needs or concerns, they're not coming to you directly. It was falling apart beautifully. Each executive was being exposed for exactly what I knew they were. Damon didn't understand the technical work, Gwendolyn didn't understand the market, and Fallon wasn't actually managing client relationships. Then, Marcus asked the question that destroyed everything. This is concerning. If our CEO doesn't understand our methodologies, our CFO is projecting below-market growth, and our VP of sales isn't directly managing key client relationships. Who is actually running the strategic aspects of this company? The room went silent. I could see all three executives looking at each other, realizing they'd just been completely exposed in front of the board. That's when Damon made the worst decision of his career. He tried to throw everyone else under the bus. Marcus, I think what we're seeing here is a breakdown in communication between departments. My team has been working on strategic initiatives that perhaps haven't been properly coordinated with finance and sales. Celeste's mouth dropped open. Excuse me? My projections are based on information provided by your office. Well, Fallon jumped in. Maybe if there was better communication about strategic initiatives, sales would be better positioned to speak to client relationships. And there it was. They started arguing with each other in front of the board, pointing fingers, contradicting each other, making it obvious they had no idea what each other was doing. Veronica looked directly at me. Sienna, you've been quiet back there. You work closely with all these departments. What's your perspective on our strategic coordination? This was my moment. 8 months of preparation led to this exact question. Well, I said, standing up calmly, I think what we're seeing is the difference between high-level oversight and operational knowledge. Our programs are actually performing very well, but the metrics we use to measure success and the client feedback we receive daily don't always get communicated up through traditional reporting channels. I pulled out my tablet. For example, our technical methodologies are actually quite advanced compared to competitors, but they're complex systems that require hands-on experience to explain properly. Our financial performance could support much more aggressive growth projections, but only if we tracking the right metrics and understanding market opportunities. And our client relationships are stronger than ever, but that's because we've shifted to more frequent, substantive interactions that go beyond traditional account management. The board members were nodding. Finally, someone was giving them clear, confident answers. Can you elaborate on those market opportunities? Julian asked. For the next 20 minutes, I walked them through everything. Real technical explanations of our methodologies. Detailed market analysis showing where we could grow, specific client feedback about emerging needs, information I'd been gathering for months, while the executives focused on presentations and politics. By the time I finished, the contrast was obvious. The executives looked confused and defensive. I looked prepared and competent. Eliza asked the question that ended their careers. Sienna, in your opinion, what would need to change for us to reach our full potential as a company? Honestly, I said, I think we need leadership that understands our work at an operational level, financial planning that reflects market realities, and client relationship management that focuses on ongoing value creation rather than periodic check-ins. The talent and systems are here. We just need strategic direction that's based on actual knowledge rather than assumptions. Marcus nodded slowly. That's very insightful, thank you. The meeting ended with the board requesting private time to discuss what they'd heard. The executives filed out, looking like they'd been hit by a truck. Over the next 2 weeks, everything happened exactly like I'd planned. The board called individual meetings with each executive. Damon couldn't answer basic questions about company operations. Gwendolyn couldn't defend her projections when challenged with industry data. Fallon couldn't provide evidence of her strategic value to client relationships. Meanwhile, I kept doing my job perfectly. Kept providing valuable insights to board members when they asked. Kept demonstrating that I understood every aspect of the business they were concerned about. On the last Friday of September, Damon was given a choice: resign or face a vote of no confidence. He resigned. Celeste accepted an early retirement package. Fallon transferred to a subsidiary company where she could focus on relationship maintenance without strategic responsibilities. On Monday morning, October 1st, I walked into the office as the new regional director of strategic development. My salary had tripled. I received the bonus they denied me, plus back pay for the 8 months I'd waited, plus a profit-sharing agreement that guaranteed me a percentage of all new revenue I generated. But here's the most beautiful part: they never figured out what happened. They just thought the board had become more demanding, that market pressures had exposed their weaknesses, that timing had worked against them. They had no idea that for 8 months, I'd been systematically studying their insecurities, creating situations where those insecurities would destroy them. The company is doing better than ever now. We're growing at 22% annually. Client satisfaction is up. Revenue is up. And every month, when I get my profit-sharing check, I remember that meeting in September when they told me there was no money for bonuses. Sometimes people ask me how I did it, how I went from being dismissed to being in charge in less than a year. The answer is simple: I paid attention, I learned, and I waited for the right moment to show them who they were really dealing with. They thought they could treat me like I didn't matter. Instead, they taught me exactly how to make sure I was the only one who mattered. So if you're in a situation where people are underestimating you, where they're treating you like you don't deserve recognition for your work, remember this story: sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting everything. If this story inspired you, hit that like button and tell me in the comments what moment hit you the hardest. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. Because sometimes patience, preparation, and paying attention can be the most powerful weapons you have.